like all the big stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Every profound book you've read, every meditation practice you've tried, every moment of seeking enlightenment. What if, and stick with me here, what if all of that was actually just medicine?
Medicine.
Yeah, medicine specifically prescribed for a sick person. And you've been eating this medicine for so long, across your entire life, that you've actually convinced yourself this is what a feast tastes like.
Oh, wow.
Right. What if you haven't even had a single bite of the real feast yet?
I mean, that just forces a completely different, a complete reevaluation of what we consider a baseline. You know,
Totally.
we operate under this assumption that our current capacity for joy or our current spiritual practices represent the absolute ceiling of human experience. But if we follow that thought experiment, our baseline for a good meal might actually just be the equivalent of like choking down cough syrup so we don't perish.
Yeah, just to survive the night.
Yeah, exactly. We look at our spiritual or intellectual lives and think we're dining at a banquet, but we might literally just be sitting in the hospital cafeteria trying to keep our strength up.
And that massive shift in perspective, that's the central mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a highly mystical piece of religious literature.
Which is fascinating to unpack.
It really is. The entry we're looking at is dated November 2nd, 1926. It comes from volume 20 of this massive multi-volume body of spiritual writings. And the entire text revolves around this really profound concept of the holy fiat, or the divine will.
Yeah, and to understand the gravity of what this 1926 text is claiming, we first need to define what that term actually means in this specific context.
Right, because it's a very specific usage.
Right. So fiat is Latin for let it be done. In traditional theology, it refers to a divine decree like God saying, let there be light, or Mary saying, let it be done to me at the Annunciation.
The command, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in this text, the supreme fiat or divine will isn't just a command you obey. It's presented as like an operating system.
Oh, I like that. An operating system.
Yeah. The text is describing a state where a human being doesn't just do what God wants, but actually operates with the very will of the divine animating them from the inside out.
Now, we are obviously dealing with a deeply theological framework here. The narrator of this text is documenting these direct mystical conversations with Jesus.
Right.
But for our purposes today, we aren't here to debate religious dogma or validate the theology. We want to look at this through the lens of its incredibly rich metaphors.
So there's a lot of them.
So many. We want to explore its striking perspective on human spiritual evolution and this radical reframing of what redemption actually looks like.
And the narrator begins by describing this highly visual participatory experience. She isn't just, passively receiving a vision while sitting in a chair.
He's actively involved.
Very much so. She describes acting within this holy fiat.
Yeah.
And as she operates within this divine will, she absorbs light. But that light doesn't stay contained within her. When the light reflects back out, it begins to create this massive, intertwined net of light that literally stretches out to cover the entire earth.
That is such a cinematic image.
It really is. And the stated purpose of this glowing net is to capture souls.
So the imagery is incredible, but I want to understand the mechanics of it, right? Because the text says that Jesus explains this net is woven out of his knowledges.
Yeah.
He says that these knowledges are divine revelations about the eternal fiat. But, how exactly does knowledge weave a net?
Right? Sounds abstract.
Yeah, because we usually think of knowledge as just information, It's just facts stored in a brain. How does understanding a concept physically or spiritually capture a soul?
Well, in the realm of mystical literature, divine knowledge is never just data. It's an ontological reality. It's a literal substance.
So it has weight to it.
Exactly. When the narrator receives a knowledge, a profound revelation about the nature of the divine will, she isn't just learning a fact for a test. She is embodying a piece of the divine essence. Because she is acting within the holy fiat, every time she grasps a new truth, that truth extends outward from her like a luminous thread.
Wait, so the net physically grows based on her capacity to understand?
Precisely. The more knowledges she receives and internalizes, the wider and denser this net becomes. It's an active mechanism for preparation.
Preparation for what, exactly?
Well, the text argues that expanding this net of knowledge is what actually prepares the earth for the coming of his kingdom. The light stretches all the way to the divine, anchors itself, and then is cast out over humanity.
So she's just a conduit.
Yeah, she's weaving an infrastructure of light over the globe simply by participating in this divine education.
But the sheer scale of that, covering the entire Earth with a net, that brings up an immediate problem for the narrator, though, doesn't it?
Oh, a massive problem.
Because she looks at the magnitude of this task, preparing a global kingdom, and then she looks at her own spiritual contribution, her own small acts.
Which feel tiny in comparison.
Exactly. Her little bits of love, her moments of adoration, her daily tears and pains. And she realizes they are incredibly tiny compared to the objective.
Which is a very, very natural human reaction when confronted with the infinite. I mean, who wouldn't feel small?
Right.
But rather than collapsing into despair over her smallness, she employs this really fascinating strategy. She mentally approaches the Heavenly Mother Mary.
Okay, here we go.
And the narrator takes her own finite, limited acts and purposefully hides them inside the immense seas of the Heavenly Mother's love, thanks, and pain.
You know, I was reading the section and it immediately brought to mind this financial analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
It's like a little kid taking the 3 crumpled dollar bills from their piggy bank and depositing them into a billionaire's bank account so they can jointly purchase something massive like a skyscraper.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Right. The kid's $3 wouldn't even buy a single brick on its own. But by hiding it in the billionaire's account and merging their funds, she's leveraging the queen's infinite spiritual capital to actually make the purchase.
And that analogy perfectly illustrates the spiritual logic operating under the surface of this text. It outlines an interconnected spiritual economy.
A spiritual economy.
Yeah. In our modern, highly individualized world, we tend to think of our spiritual or intellectual pursuits as solo endeavors.
Like you earn what you work for.
Exactly. Your merits are yours, your failures are yours. But this mystical framework operates on a communal economy. Human weakness isn't a failure state in this system.
It's just a starting point.
It's simply a starting point. The narrator recognizes her profound poverty, but she intuitively understands the mechanics of this economy. By merging her tiny drops of water with Mary's oceanic grace, they become one single offering.
Which changes everything.
It does. Her prayers suddenly take on the massive scale and the vast boundaries of the Queen's prayers. She's doing this specifically to beg for the kingdom of the supreme fiat, mirroring the way Mary once successfully begged for the Redeemer to come to earth.
Okay, so the narrator merges these accounts. She's teaming up with Mary. But right after this, she gets hit with this severe crisis of doubt.
Yes, she does.
She stops and thinks, if the kingdom of the supreme fiat is the ultimate goal, like the absolute pinnacle of human and divine reconciliation, why didn't the Heavenly Mother care about that?
It's a huge question.
Right. Why did Mary only focus her immense spiritual capital on getting the Redeemer? Did she somehow miss the bigger picture?
It's a stunning moment of vulnerability in the text. I mean, she is essentially critiquing the historical focus of the most revered figure in her entire theology.
Yeah, that takes some nerve.
It does. But this doubt acts as a brilliant narrative device. It sources the issue, prompting Jesus to step in and explain the overarching timeline of divine missions across human history.
Hold on. Let's look at this timeline and how the text structures this, like generational handoff.
Okay.
Jesus says that because the narrator didn't exist back then, Mary stepped in and substituted for her to obtain the Redeemer. And now, the timeline has flipped. The narrator must substitute for Mary in begging for the kingdom of the divine will. The text actually calls Mary the firstborn in the divine will, and the narrator the secondborn.
Yes.
So, wait, is this text actually claiming a 1920s mystic is somehow superior to Mary, or has a more advanced mission? Because that seems like it crosses a major theological line and would ruffle some serious feathers.
If you read it strictly as a hierarchy of importance, it absolutely would. That would be wildly controversial.
Yeah.
But the text anticipates that friction and provides a very careful mechanism to explain it. Jesus clarifies that the root and the substance of everything both Jesus and Mary did was always the kingdom of the divine will.
Oh, so it wasn't a separate goal.
Not at all. That was always the ultimate endgame. It's entirely about sequence, not competition.
So Mary didn't miss the bigger picture.
Definitely not. Think of it like monumental architecture, right?
Yeah.
You cannot build a glorious towering cathedral which represents the divine will without first digging into the dirt and pouring a massive concrete foundation.
And that foundation is redemption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mary perfectly fulfilled her specific mission, which was to pour that flawless foundation. Redemption had to come first. It was a completely necessary prerequisite.
Because you couldn't have a kingdom without first saving the people who would live in it.
Right.
So you have to let the concrete foundation cure before you can start building the walls.
Yes, and now the narrator is arriving with the materials to frame the house. They are a team passing a baton across centuries.
It's a generational relay race.
It really is. And the text explicitly points out that Mary rejoices in sharing all her seas of grace with the narrator because the ultimate victory belongs to both of them.
That's beautiful.
It dismantles the idea of isolated historical events and instead presents a continuum, one massive unfolding mission across time.
And understanding that sequence redemption first as the foundation, then the divine will as the house, that sets up the absolute core of this text.
It does.
It brings us right back to the hook we started with. Because once you understand the timeline, the text introduces its most memorable metaphor. It explores the profound difference in how these two eras, these two different kingdoms, actually feed the human soul.
Right. Jesus explains that redemption, he's coming to earth, his suffering, the establishment of the church, it all came primarily as a remedy.
Medicine.
Yes, it was designed as medicine for humanity, because humanity at that stage was utterly sick, blind, and mute.
And the text doesn't pull any punches here when describing that sickness.
Not at all.
It actually takes aim at the Eucharist itself, the sacramental life, which is the absolute center of Catholic worship. In the context of this current era, the era of redemption, even the Eucharist is treated as medicine.
It's a really radical critique of mere piety. Jesus said that because people are spiritually sick, they have corrupt palates and indigestion.
Oh.
When they consume this divine food, they don't fully taste or digest the immense divine strength inside it. They just go through the motions.
It's like checking a box.
Yeah. They receive the sacrament, they eat the medicine, but they remain sick. They're eating without appetite, just to sustain a baseline of life, not to truly live.
Think about what happens when you have a terrible flu, right?
Worst.
When your body is severely ill, even your absolute favorite meal, let's say it's your mom's homemade lasagna, it just tastes like wet cardboard.
You can't taste a thing.
You can't smell the garlic. You can't taste the cheese. It just feels heavy and awful in your mouth. So you force down a few spoonfuls of bland chicken soup just to survive the night.
And your body often rejects it. The digestion is labor because all your energy is going toward fighting off the infection.
Right.
And that is exactly how the text describes the current state of humanity's spiritual digestion. People are taking their daily dose of grace, but they are feverish. It's a chore.
It's laborious.
But the text promises a massive shift. In the kingdom of the divine will, Jesus says his acts won't be food for the sick anymore.
They will be food for the healthy. Because when you finally recover from that terrible flu, eating that exact same homemade lasagna is an absolute joy. Palate is clean, your stomach is strong, and you can actually savor every single layer of the meal.
You actually want to eat it.
Exactly. The text is basically arguing that humanity has essentially been eating with the spiritual flu for centuries.
And that shift from surviving to thriving is the crux of the entire revelation. And the text takes it a step further by explaining how this health physically manifests over time.
Oh, how so?
Well, currently, in this era of medicine, the sacramental life is received intermittently. Usually someone receives communion once a day or once a week.
Right.
You take your pill, and then you go back out into the world to fight off the sickness again.
It's an interrupted process. You get a boost, and then it inevitably fades.
But the text argues that those who possess the divine will, those who are fully healthy, will have God's life inside them continuously. It compares them to the saints in heaven. For them, there are no more interrupted communions. It is a permanent state of being. It's the ultimate internalization of goodness.
So redemption shifts from being a mere remedy for sin to being a continuous joy. The healthy person eats to grow stronger and to enjoy the beauty of the meal, not just to stave off death for another 24 hours.
Exactly. It's a vision of human flourishing that completely discards the survival mode mentality. It suggests that our ultimate destiny isn't just to be forgiven or cured, but to be elevated into a state of continuous joyful expansion.
Man, it has been a fascinating journey through this 1926 mystical entry.
It really has.
We started with the visual mechanics of the narrator, weaving a massive net of light out of divine knowledges. We watched her navigate the spiritual economy by borrowing a queen's infinite grace to fund a global request.
Teaming up across time.
Right. We explored the deep philosophical timeline of generational substitution building, the house of the divine will on the foundation of redemption. And finally, we landed on this ultimate paradigm shift, stepping out of the hospital ward of spiritual medicine and sitting down for a continuous joyful feast for the healthy.
And, while this is a highly specific, deeply theological text, the framework it provides is universally challenging.
Oh, for sure.
I would suggest taking this medicine versus healthy food framework and holding it up to your own life today. Look closely at how you consume information, how you engage in your relationships, or even how you tackle your daily work.
That's a great point.
Are you operating in survival mode? Are you just swallowing your daily experiences like bitter pills, doing the bare minimum to survive the grind with a corrupt palate? Or are you digesting your life, your learning, and your connections with the healthy, joyful appetite of someone who is truly alive and thriving?
Wow, that is a perfect thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It is an absolute privilege to explore these profound, complex sources with you and uncover the unexpected insights hidden within them. Keep asking the big questions, keep checking your appetite, and we'll catch you on the next one.